Hi guys, I hope all is well. I am back with an update, and unfortunately it's not a good update. Also, I would like to apologize in advance if I'm talking low. I am a night shift nurse, and because the patients are asleep, I'm trying not to be so loud. I do have a little downtime, so I figured now would be a good time to make an update. Also, forgive me in advance if I look away from the camera. I do have some notes so that I'm able to give you guys accurate information. Again, as I said, the update is not so good, but I feel that it is necessary. And, you know, it probably should have been done sooner, but emotionally, I'm just now getting around to it to where I can talk about it. Well, the last time I posted, I was so ecstatic because I had gotten my first positive pregnancy test. However, the excitement was short lived because that same night that I received my positive pregnancy test, I did have some bleeding. Um, I did assume that it was implantation bleeding, so I didn't think much of it. However, the next day, which was okay, I got my first positive test on January 31st that night. That's when I had the bleeding, but I thought it was implantation bleeding, so I didn't think much of it. February 1st, the bleeding became heavier, and I also had some clots. So that day, my husband did take me to the ER, and it's been downhill since then. They did do some blood work, and they also did an ultrasound, but of course, it was too soon, so they couldn't see anything on the ultrasound. My HCG was at 18, which I was told was barely pregnant, so they advised me to come back within 72 hours to get another HCG test done. They also gave me a diagnosis of threatened miscarriage, which was very scary. And I was also placed on pelvic rest, which meant no lifting or no sex until I was in the clear. So, as I said, since the day I found out that I was pregnant, it's been very scary. So, 72 hours later, I went back to the ER to get another HCG test done, and my HCG results were at 86, which was good because not only did it double, but it tripled. So, I mean, it would have been best if I just left it at that and went to go see my OB at my 6-week appointment. However, after I got those results, I still had some complications, so I did continue to keep going to the ER. So on February 8th, I had more spotting, and they did another HCG test, which was 4 days later from the day I got the 86. And on this day, my results were 160. The doctor came in and told me that by my HCG not doubling, that it was not a viable pregnancy and that I should expect a miscarriage. Okay, well, first of all, although I am a nurse, I had no idea about these HCG tests and the doubling and how they're able to, figure out that you're able to have a miscarriage just by these numbers. Because, like I said, I'm a nurse, but I work with older people. You know, OB is not my specialty, so all these things were just foreign to me. But I was able to do some research, and I found other girls who were going through the same thing. And there were some who said that their numbers did not double at first, but as time went on, their numbers did double. However, it was more who said, yeah, my numbers didn't double, and I had a miscarriage or a blighting ovum. And that was another thing I had never heard of. So I researched that, and I found that a blighting ovum is when there's an empty sac. So I was like, oh my God, all these things are happening, and this is my first pregnancy. So, it was just already, just a crazy roller coaster from the first day I found out that I was pregnant. So, after my results being 160, from there, I had already, kind of prepared in my mind that this wasn't a viable pregnancy. I was going to have a miscarriage. So really, I never had any time to really embrace the fact that I was pregnant. I didn't tell many people. I announced it on here, but I only shared with like my mom and my cousin. I was so scared to tell anyone because after hearing this news, I had already prepared in my mind that, it wasn't viable and to get ready to have a miscarriage. So every morning, I would go to the restroom, I would wipe, just so afraid that if I seen any spotting, it was time. I was about to have a miscarriage. I was just on edge. So, yeah, on the 8th of February, I had some spotting, and that's when I was told that my HCG was not doubling and that it was at 160. So on February 11th, which was 3 days later, I was able to go see my OB since according to, the doctors, they go off your last menstrual period, and at your 6th week, that's when they're able to, do an ultrasound and see if they see anything. Well, in my mind, because we had planned this pregnancy, I knew I wasn't 6 weeks along. I was only maybe about 4 weeks. So I knew at 4 weeks that they wouldn't have been able to see anything. But, I was still able to go see my OB, and she did another blood draw. And 3 days later, I went from 160 to 190. So my HCG still hadn't doubled. It only went up 30 points in 3 days. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. I already know that, I'm not going to carry this baby. So at this time, I had already kind of, just prepared for the worst. And, my OB did another ultrasound, and of course, they didn't see anything because, as I said, I was only maybe 4 weeks along. So on February 17th, which was 6 days later from the day I went to see my OB, I had severe cramping on my left side, to the point I could barely walk. I couldn't move. I'm really good at handling pain, but this pain was so bad, my husband had to take me back to the ER. From there, they did do another HCG test, and at this time, my numbers were only 198. So in 6 days, my number only went up 8 points. And also they did an ultrasound, and on the ultrasound, they found a mass on my left fallopian tube, and I was diagnosed with ectopic pregnancy, which, like I said, all these things were so foreign to me. Yeah, I had heard of maybe, years ago, my cousin's best friend said that she had a tubal pregnancy, but, I didn't really do much research on it. I was young, and that's not something that you hear every day. So, of course, I never thought it would happen to me, and I didn't even know what all this even meant. So, the doctors rushed in, telling me things about emergency surgery and, things about they would have to take one of my fallopian tubes. And it was just so much, I was hysterical. My husband was trying to calm me down. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, my goodness, first pregnancy and this. But, thankfully, they called the OB doctor who was there on site. And because my mass wasn't, that big and my fallopian tube hadn't ruptured, I did not have to have surgery. But they did advise me that the next day I needed to go see my OB doctor so that she can determine where to go from there. And the next day, I went to go see my doctor, which was February 18th, which was last Monday. And she also said, based on the size of the mass, that I did not have to have the surgery, but that I did have to have the methotrexate injection, which is a chemotherapy drug that is basically, to sum it up, is used to dissolve the pregnancy. And, because the embryo was in my tube, it wasn't viable, and it was also life-threatening to me. So my only option was to get the injection. I did get the injection done that day, and I was told to come back in 3 days to see if my numbers had gone down. The thing with the methotrexate injection is that you're not to take any prenatal pills or eat anything with folic acid, because that's what the embryo feed on. And if you have those things, it can get bigger and then you can rupture. So since last Monday, I had to stop taking my prenatal pills. I also haven't had anything with folic acid in it. And then they tell you to come back so that they can check your HCG levels to make sure that the numbers have gone down to 0. And once the numbers have gone down to 0, you're basically no longer pregnant. So on February 21st, I went back to have another blood drawn. And at this point, it had went down to 131. So within 3 days, my numbers dropped from 198 to 131, which, I hate to say it, but I'm glad that I'm moving in the right direction, because I don't want a ruptured tube. Some girls are not fortunate, and they do have to go through emergency surgery, and they have to get one of their fallopian tubes ruptured. So I'm just fortunate, to still have my life, and also to still have my tube. So I did go get another blood test done today, and I'm still waiting those results. And it's just been a roller coaster since I found out that I was pregnant. And my plan, also the doctor advised that you wait 2 menstrual cycles or 3 months before you try to conceive again. So I'm anxious to try again. However, I am on hold because, I don't want to, be trying to conceive, and I still have this chemotherapy drug in my body. And not only that, but all the folic acid is depleted now. So I'm on hold from TTCing, and, I'm just counting down into May, because I do feel that I do believe that God is good, and I do feel that if He allowed me to get pregnant once, surely He'll do it again. I'm just praying that, the next time I do conceive, that it is in the right place. They do tell you with one ectopic pregnancy, you are at a higher risk for having another one. I'm still a little confused, because I read the risk factors for ectopic pregnancy, and none of those things apply to me. So I'm not even really sure how it happened. But, I don't question God. I know that everything happens for a reason. I can say that this experience has truly brought me closer to God, because every day I've been praying like I don't know what, just praying that also, now that I've had the injection, it said that I'm not really in the clear until my numbers are down to 0, into the mass, and also into the mass decrease. So every day, I'm still nervous, hoping and praying that everything is just moving into the right direction. So right now, that's pretty much where I'm at, and I'll keep you guys updated, and thank you for following me on my TTC journey.